Hi, how are you? I'm Anthony from Cypher House, and today I'm back with another installment of Maze-tober. I'm visiting a different corn maze every weekend in October, and I'm analyzing the different design philosophies that went into making these mazes to learn something about puzzle design. Today we're going to be looking at Unangst Tree Farm in Bath, Pennsylvania. And I want to apologize in advance because I'm not entirely sure that I was pronouncing Unangst correctly for the entire time that I was at the corn maze. We're here at Unangst Tree Farm in Bath, Pennsylvania. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. You are not. You are not pronouncing that right. Unangst has a 6-acre corn maze. It's $8 a person for admissions, but children 5 and under get in for free. There's plenty of marketplace areas as we first walk into Unangst. I'm not actually sure where the corn maze is, so we're gonna just walk around for a bit and see what we find. So we quickly discovered where to buy our tickets, and we were off to the maze. So kind of like Mazezilla, we get to ride a hayride in order to get to the maze here. Look at these! These are actual hayrides. The hayride gave us an option to see exactly how big Unangst Farm actually is. There's also a Christmas tree farm here. And off we go! Through the Christmas trees. You can see the corn maze in the distance over there beyond the trees. This property's pretty big. We came from all the way over there. There's still all this behind us, more Christmas trees. I think that's our corn maze way in the distance back there. Just kidding, that might not be our corn maze. Our corn maze might be back there. Finally, we reached our destination. All right, we got lots of corn. I think the entrance is just around the corner to the left here. That sure does look like a corn maze entrance to me. Now I want to take a brief detour in this story to tell you a little bit about last year's corn maze at Unangst Tree Farm. I want to do this because it's a good study of the role that expectation plays in the puzzle-solving experience. Liz and I visited Unangst last year with a couple of friends, and we were able to fully complete their corn maze. This is the map of last year's corn maze as seen on Google Maps. The entrance to the corn maze is up here at the top right of this big U shape, right there. And you'll see that a majority of the path into the maze includes these simple loops that mostly take the solver back to the one path that takes them further and deeper into the maze. As a result, it wasn't particularly tough to explore these various paths, particularly because we were there with a couple of friends. We would always just send somebody down one of the paths, and then we'd immediately find a dead end, or that they would meet up later. There was only this single point on the left-hand side of the maze where the two paths very deeply diverged. One path takes solvers all the way up into the top left corner of the maze, but the exit was actually back at the start where we began, so we wanted to go down through the inner part of this large U shape in order to get out. When we were solving the maze, we didn't know that the maze was missing this patch in the middle, so we weren't sure when we got to this intersection which of the two paths to go down. I'm talking about this because last year's maze and the structure that it followed shaped our expectations for this year's maze. So you're going to see the effect of some of those expectations as we go through the maze this year. Alright, we're here at the very first choice in the corn maze. Do we go left or right? I don't know. The challenge in this corn maze is to find, looks like 12 different stations and fill out whatever's written on them. If we do that successfully, we get entered into a drawing prize for gift cards, which is cool. What do you think, Liz, left or right? This one. You're gonna go right? I'll go left, okay? We'll see if they meet up. Bye! We're gonna see if these two paths come together or not. I think they might, because this one bends back around. Alright, and Liz and I met up again, so there's really only one path for us. We're gonna keep exploring. I was somewhat confident that these early paths would meet back up because of the expectations that I had from last year's corn maze. We do not have any map for this maze. None was provided, so we're pretty much winging it. We're gonna see if we can find all 12 of the stations without any map guidance whatsoever. So there I was, thinking that the majority of the early maze would be simple to explore loops or quickly ending dead paths. Okay, so this corn maze is made up of a lot of circles. Liz and I have just basically been splitting up and then saying, oh hey, there you are. We just met up again. We still haven't found any stations, but we're pretty sure we've exhausted all of the paths up until this point. But that's the funny thing about developing expectations of this sort. On the one hand, expectations can be a powerful tool to help solvers with experience to better approach puzzles in the future. On the other hand, a solver who has established some expectations can also find themselves very surprised when those expectations are shattered. So Liz and I split up at that one branching path, and the paths did not seem to come back together. At least I didn't get to a point where they did. So I'm heading back to the branch, and I'm going to hopefully get some info from Liz. Oh good, Liz is back here. What did you find? Yeah, mine kind of kept going for a long while. I passed a nice guy in the tower. Unlike last year's corn maze, this year the maze had several non-trivial branches for us to explore. Liz and I have been trying to iteratively explore this corn maze by just going down paths that we think are going to loop up and meet up. We haven't found any stations yet though. We've been here almost 15 minutes, so that's a little bit scary, but we're gonna keep going. The shattering of our expectations combined with our initial inability to find any stations in the maze led to a very delightful feeling. For someone who solves a lot of puzzles, it's a really interesting experience to go into something expecting it to be a cakewalk, only to discover that you really shouldn't have underestimated the puzzle in the first place. Okay, I was exploring down this pathway in the maze, and we found our first sign. Cow milking is the answer. With our first answer in hand, we continued to explore the depths of the maze. So this maze does have people hidden in little towers to help you out as you go through. There's a guy in a tower over there. We made it to station 2, water. We decided to use another maze-solving trick to help keep track of where we were within the maze. One trick for getting through corn mazes is to kind of try to name areas of the maze based on the shape that you find yourself in. So this area directly in front of us, I'm calling the big wheel, because if you go that way, or if you go that way, it loops around this big patch of corn in the center here. However, there are several offshoots going out along the edges, kind of like the spokes of the wheel of a car. So I don't know if we're in the center of the maze or if this is just a good central hub, but it's a good place to reference ourselves. And it's easier to identify which spoke we're part of because there's another sign here. This one's tree planting. Eventually, we reached the halfway point. All right, Liz and I just found our 6th sign, the seed planter. Now, we've only been in the maze for about 40 minutes, but I'm a little bit concerned that the challenge here is going to be finding the last sign or two. We've been trying to be real diligent and careful about remembering like what paths we still have to explore and stuff, but the maze is pretty big and has a lot of loops and winding paths and dead ends and stuff. So there's a lot of like secret little places they could hide things, and we're just trying our best to keep track of it all. To help with my concerns, I decided to try out another method of keeping track of where we were within the maze. On the back of the piece of paper that they gave us to record our answers, I'm attempting to draw a very rudimentary map. We entered what I think was the bottom left corner of the maze, and then we kind of went into the maze a little bit and made our way to the right. We passed 2 towers on our way here with people in them, and then we got to the big wheel. And then we kind of went down from the big wheel and over to the smaller wheel where we're at now. And this is also where we found our 6th sign. Now there's more paths that continue off to the left, so I think I have proportions here a bit wrong. We probably went a lot further in when we entered the maze. And I assume this is going to dead end eventually, unless it just leads to the exit. Maybe this is going to lead to the exit. Oh, hello, bug! You want to tell me where we should go? Okay, so from our small wheel, there were a couple of ways to branch off. One path took me back to Tower 1, and I'm pretty sure the guy in Tower 1 knows me pretty well now, because I've talked to him both times. The guy in the tower kind of hinted that this path might lead us to the exit, which I'm guessing makes sense because we're going right back to the entrance. So while we probably missed a bunch of stuff here at the top of the maze, I think we can pretty clearly rule out a lot of stuff at the bottom of the maze. And, as would surprise nobody, the man who worked at the maze was correct. Okay, so Liz and I found our way out of the maze. The entrance is right behind us. We came back in because we only have 8 of the 12 stations, so we're going to keep exploring and see if we can find the last 4 that we need. In case you're curious, it took us about 50 minutes to get through the maze with 8 of the stations, and so yeah, now we're going to see how much longer it takes us to get the rest of the stations. So we began our second pass at the maze to look for those missing stations. So when we first found our big first major branch, I remembered it because there was a bit of a circle here, and then it took us over to Tower 1. We checked out this path that we ignored before, and it splintered off a few times, which is why we didn't fully explore it the first time. But they all turned out to be dead ends, And one of them did indeed have one of our missing pieces on it. After a lot more exploring, we eventually found ourselves with only one station left to find. We just found our 11th sign, and we're starting to exhaust places in the maze that I feel like we haven't been. There's mostly just one path past where we are now that we think is eventually going to loop back around to the big wheel and enter back into there. So we were hoping that our 12th station would be along that final path that we had to explore. The path branched slightly, and along my path I didn't find anything. I was about to give up hope, but then... Alright, I don't know where this last signpost is. Liz and I split up again, and we're just kind of exploring. What was that? Caca? Did you find something?
Yes, I found something.
Hey, there's our last sign. All right, we successfully found all 12 pieces in the maze, so now we just got to remember how to get out. I mean, that's easier said than done. My map is far from the most accurate, but I have confidence that we'll get there eventually. And finally, we made it out of the maze. So we just found the exit. We made it completely out of the maze with all 12 in about an hour and 20 minutes, I think. That's with 2 full walkthroughs through the maze to collect the ones that we missed the first time. So we hopped back onto the hayride and made our way back to the entrance. When we got there, I decided it was time to ask Liz what her favorite part of coming to Unangst Farm had been. So Lizzie, what was your favorite part of coming to Unangst Farm?
I think it has to be the soft pretzel with the cheese.
But before we left the farm, we made a couple of friends first. We got plenty of little animals over here. We got chicken. Hey buddy. Little piggies. Hi, how are you? I'm Anthony from Cypher House.
He doesn't seem to care.
Hi, buddy. So that pretty much wraps it up for our experience at Unangst Farm. I'm gonna pass it back over to bottom corner of the screen, Anthony. Back to you, bottom corner of the screen, Anthony. Thank you, middle of the screen, Anthony. Is everything okay? I'm sensing a little bit of hostility from you. So let's talk about some of the design choices that went into creating this maze. Unangst takes a different approach to maze construction from any other corn maze in this series. Unangst might be one of the only locations where a full map of the maze is never made available to the solver. This is an intentional design choice, since the overall construction of the maze is simple enough that a map is generally not needed. Unangst balances its maze design on a very fine line, where it's difficult enough that it takes some time to get through, particularly if you're looking for all of the stations, yet it's still approachable without a map. That line is something that's very difficult to get right, and it's something that skilled puzzle designers often strive to do. Unangst decided to implement a very different maze design from the one that they had last year. And again, I think they're the only maze in this series, at least among the ones that I've visited before, that has this sort of expectation difference. For some solvers, myself included, this difference in expectation can be a really interesting twist that keeps the maze solving fresh year after year. I enjoyed that Unangst was able to shatter my expectations and give me a new, fresh maze experience that was a challenge. That said, I could imagine that this breaking of expectations could have the opposite effect for some repeat solvers. Someone who attended the maze last year and enjoyed the relatively simple entry path might have been surprised this year to find that that sort of structure didn't exist. Gauging and balancing these expectations is another very tricky job that puzzle designers have to consider when they're creating their puzzle-solving experiences. That wraps up our experience at Unangst Tree Farm. Let me know your favorite maze-solving tricks or maze design philosophies down in the comments section. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day, and as always, happy escaping.